Blue Blankets. Written by Jaxon Hess. Narrated by Isao Koshiwa. My bed felt like stone, chunky slab. You know, something straight out of the Flintstones. Half of the wrinkly navy blue sheets were hanging off the bed. On the other half of the bed was a disheveled pile of journals, binders, my planner, my leather brown messenger bag, and a taped-together Amazon box of office supplies. Across the ravine between my bed and my old wooden nightstand sat my black, emotionless phone. My eyes burned a little from the blue light that emitted from the phone. The message was still on the screen. Message from this user are now. The phone suddenly locked. My head sank into my fat, decompressed pillow. Thoughts started to race into my head. My heart wasn't beating fast, but it was heavy. No, my head was what was pounding instead. I kept thinking to myself, what was I going to do with my life? I meant it. I had no idea what I was good at or anything. I was going to be a failure, right? I was a failure. Only failures are unsure of themselves, right? Oh, God. I found myself sitting up in my bed. My lungs felt short. My breath was lighter. My throat was tight. I couldn't. The first thing I felt when I woke up was the black plastic spacebar on my metallic black laptop, leaving an indent on my forehead. I quickly shot up and took a breath. I was sweating. My body felt hot. I quickly looked around to find myself back in the same room. My light blue bedroom was the same as the dream. I was laid across the end of my bed. My feet were resting on the flat pillow at the wooden headboard. There was a dark brown drafting desk to the left of my bed. I wasn't sure what it was made of. Maybe oak? Next to that was an even darker chest that had a matching pile of miscellaneous crap stacked on top of it. Then, of course, there was the old wooden nightstand that my phone rested on. There wasn't even a message this time. Just 11 p.m. was sprawled out across it. 11 p.m. is a really weird time to pass out. I plugged my phone from the white duct tape charger that stretched itself from the outlet to my phone. You know, I'd always thought I was a little too out of touch to use that thing. My eyes were finally blinded as they made their way back to my laptop. A piercing white page tore at my eyes as thin, black blinking line mocked me. I deleted the mile-long space I had created with my now red forehead. Nothing. No new changes to the script. Well, shit. I always talk to myself when writing. My phone buzzed lightly. 8-track. Hey, what you doing? Want to go to the store? It was a dorky nickname. Tristan and I always ended up getting groceries together. It was just something fun we would do. We'd end up going to Kroger or Walmart, and then watch a movie back at her house. I'd help her carry her groceries, and she'd bop her head to the songs in the store. Tonight, we were in Walmart. We were just randomly searching in the back of the gray, sprinkled with bits of black and white linoleum-floored store. You know, when you get bored and you want to see what movies they had. There was about 4 aisles of these boring, gray, metallic shelves that held an array of colors on them. It was almost like someone held up a prism and shined the rainbow on the shelves. The rest of the store was always painted in this sort of washed-out yellow color. I guess that was part of why I always liked the movie section. Tristan had their fiery red-orange hair that would end towards the middle of her back. She had this bouncy walk to her. She was wearing her dark blue jeans stretched across her legs as she reached towards the top shelf. Her black queen shirt stretched as she reached her skinny arm up on this treasure she spotted. She was always really observant. She always wore shirts like Queen, Led Zeppelin, The Cars, you know, the works. Sweet! I'm so getting this. She sort of bounced when she finally came down. She always did that. Her black lace-up boots always seemed to be the one thing that kept her floating away. She wore those almost every day for the last 5 years. These were the first replacement pair I'd seen. I always liked those boots for some reason. They made me laugh whenever I saw her walk in them. She always looks so floaty. She held the DVD case out towards me. On the front was a picture of the mom from Back to the Future. Leah Thompson. Yeah, Eric Stoltz and Mary Stuart Matterson. It had this teal-blue background with white text. Some kind of wonderful? Even though the case was pretty much weightless, it felt precious, like I had to be careful with it. What's it about? You haven't seen it? We've gotta watch it. You'll like it. It's this comedy about this guy who works at a gas station and paints and his friend who's a drummer. All right. I laughed. What about Friday? Her big green eyes shined as the strip of freckles under them lifted on her cheeks with her smile. I always liked those freckles too, but I don't know why. Her eyes always had this light that laid dormant in them. The light came out every now and then. They were a little bit hidden by this sarcasm that she always had. I always catch myself smiling when I think about them. Tristan had already floated down the aisle and was headed towards the cashier, which was my signal to follow. Friday. Another movie night. I laughed. After we got her red 2004 Taurus packed with the groceries, we headed to her house. Usually I drive us in my car, but it was her groceries, so we took her car. It was a nice car. It was just the basic car sort of shape besides the hood that looked a little elongated compared to the rest of the car. Tristan had for about a year now. The groceries were packed in the trunk and took up the back seats. I took shotgun. Tristan's radio was an aux put into it, so she could listen to her music when she was driving. She always had to have a tape in the radio, though, to get the sound to play through the speakers, and tonight, Led Zeppelin's Good Times, Bad Times was blasting from those old speakers. See? The works. I told you. So how's riding going? Tristan didn't look away from the road. She was always a little on edge while driving. Her green eyes turned a little more emerald as she focused her gaze. Oh, it's, going. I quickly looked out the window. I realized how long I'd been staring at her. The houses in the neighborhood sort of blended together in their dullness. It was a lot of browns and whites and just a jumbled mess. The orange-yellow streetlights made it easier to stare at, though. It was a typical neighborhood. In our normal route, we'd pass the fire station and pass by the crowd next to her house, where you couldn't stop without hitting a restaurant or two of some type. Going, huh? Well, what do you want to do next? She laughed a little bit. It wasn't to make fun of me, because she still held this really worried? I guess you'd call it that, worried tone in her voice. Well, I've got to revise it, but I'm having trouble doing it. My fingers caught strands of my brown hair as I scratched the back of my head. We had passed the firehouse that marked the last quarter or so of the road until we made it back to her house. Well, you should start. I mean, you've got to do it sometime. She scrunched her eyebrows a little bit. Yet she held this funny, sarcastic smile. She was definitely thinking about calling me ridiculous or silly. That was exactly the face she'd made before she... You're silly, Cyrus. Of course. And you're a dork. I quickly turned back to her smiling face. Her freckles jumped up on her soft cheeks. Her emerald eyes shifted into this light green color, sort of like two apples. Well, that's a weird description anyways. Her eyebrows lost their scrunchy look and jumped into an easy, soft floating-like quality. But why haven't you started? Seriously. She was calm. She seemed well worried. I don't know. I stared at the cars flying past us as we turned right onto her street. I've been having trouble with it. I can't just get myself to finish it somehow. I don't know why. I'm just stuck. She turned again and smiled. Hey, look, I understand. I've been having a lot of trouble trying to get music off the ground lately. I just can't get anyone to stick on a project with me. Her smile faded. We were coming up to her house. Why? You're really great at what you do. Tristan and I've been playing like 9 or so years now of drums. I was honestly really surprised to find out that people weren't wanting to stick on these projects. She parked the Taurus. To my right was the one-story house that I'd seen hundreds of times before. Honestly, it looked pretty normal. Slanted driveway, a bit of grass in the front, a sidewalk in front of the house, loud, annoying neighbors. It seemed pretty normal. But this house held so many memories for me. I remember sitting down with Tristan by the door on the driveway when we were looking at the stars late one night. Kinda like that 70s show. That was a dorky reference. Anyways. I don't know. It's killing me, though. I just want to release something. Anything at all. Just like one song would be enough. Cyrus, why are people so flaky? She sighed exasperatedly. Not everyone is flaky. I mean, I'm not. And I bet you'll find some people who aren't like that. I wanted to smile, but at the same time, I just felt bad. I genuinely didn't understand. Why would someone bail on her like that? And if anyone does bail out on you, they're a dick. My hand found itself on her shoulder. Dork. She smiled a little bit. The last thing I remember after getting home that night was passing out while having a Clint Eastwood-fashion stare-down with the open document of my unchanging and restless, tormenting script. When I woke up, the lights were off, the script and blankets were gone. I was laying on the stone mattress again. Well, shit. I sat up on the bed. Of course, everything was cast in this dark hue of blue. The possibly oak desk, the dark wooden chest and nightstand. And even though my bed was now a mass of stone, the relentless piles of boxes and office supplies were still cluttering half of the rocky bed in their own dark blue shades. I turned to the left of my stone to look out across the ravine between the ridge of my bed and the nightstand at my cold phone. This time, it was locked. No message, which I thought was weird, so I just suddenly reached out for it. Couldn't be. I mean, the message had been there the other times before. Why not now? Deep in the ravine of my floor was a mountain of empty, clear bottles that only seemed to emit dark blues, that only seemed to grow into pitch black. The pile collected after countless nights of bottles falling off my nightstand and into the pit below. As my fingertips were just barely a hair length away from the thin, daunting phone, my shirt got wet. Startled, I jumped back. Suddenly, the mound of bottles were now at eye level. The bottles became their own little plastic island in the rising, deep blue water that looked black in the dark. I couldn't run. My body stuck to the bed. It was like I was fixed on the spot, magnetized in a way. At first, I grabbed my legs and rested my head on my knees. I didn't know if I liked my major, and I was already a sophomore. People should know what they want to do by now, right? Right? And on top of that, I felt weirder than usual. I know I'm usually weird, but this was something different. I felt disconnected. The water was pulling at my ankles as I slowly started to stand and reach toward the ceiling that became invisible, like a void in the darkness. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't know how to exactly explain it. I felt weird. Does that make sense? I didn't know if I could really connect to someone, but what does it even mean to connect? The water grabbed at my thighs as my whole body stretched upward. My head was pounding again. The black water was icy cold. The box of office supplies and my journals were now floating beside me. What if I'd been hiding myself from everyone else? What does that even mean? Who was I? My chest strained as my hand reached out into the nothingness. I mean, really? Who was I? The water was strangling my neck. My eyes were wide, yet everything was pitch black. My body fell deeper into the freezing black water. I couldn't see my hands anymore. I lost my own body in the dark. Who was I? Hey, yo, wake up. Wake up. A hand suddenly started towards my face, coming from the surface of the water. I couldn't make out the face. The voice was soft. It was a woman's, and it was somehow bubbly, yet stinged with sass. Wake up. The hand suddenly grasped the collar of my hoodie as I felt myself being jerked out of the water. When I woke up, I was lying on top of Tristan's soft, warm bed. Her comforter was white and flowery. The bed had a metal frame that felt French to me for some reason, even though I'm clueless when it came to interior or exterior design. I haven't even started the movie. Tristan was lying next to me. She was wrapped in her light pink blanket. Tristan's black boots were off now. They were standing upright to the left of her on the floor. I knew this room really well. I remember watching movies, listening to music, etc., all in this room with Tristan. There was the pink walls that I just helped her paint when she wanted to redecorate. In the left corner near the door, there's the black cabinet that holds her records that I helped carry in and bring from the antique shop to her house in my car. The black record, or the Victrola, as she called it, that sat on top of that cabinet. 2 black guitar cases, one more of a sleeve, and the other a long box that she inherited but didn't know how to play. The brown wooden bookshelf that held books that she hadn't read but always wanted to. Next to that was the door to the closet. The white dresser to the left side of her bed with the cold, sort of French-like lamp that sat on top of it. To my right was her wooden light brown desk. In front of us sat her old, bulky, black laptop that held a piece of paper taped over the camera. Sorry. Didn't mean to fall asleep. I sat up in the bed. Have you been sleeping all right? It's not that late. We can watch the movie tomorrow if you're too tired. Her chest expanded as her shoulders raised upwards and air blew out of her soft lips. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just been a long night. God, I'm such a dick. Let's start it up. Tristan gave me this warm smile with her bright green eyes and warm freckles, and let out a little, yay, as she carefully placed the disc in the DVD player and closed it. She caught me up a little on the plot as we watched. Tristan would always get a little passionate while watching movies or TV shows. She'd always go on about why characters would do what they do or who they were. She always blew me out of the water by talking about how much she understood them, and it really expanded the way I approached my writing. Sometimes I'd think she should be a writer. Right, he paints, she drums, got it. I felt the words sort of slurring out of my mouth. What's wrong? Tristan had this long strand of hair that had fallen off her ear. It hung by itself, caressing the left side of her face. I'd always felt this strange urge to tuck it back behind her ear. What do you mean? There's nothing wrong? I said. I did think there was something wrong with me, though. I thought about it quite a lot. Eric Stoltz spotted Mary Stuart Matterson staring forlorn at him from across the bar or club. I thought it was. I couldn't really tell, but it was on the screen. Cyrus? She looked at me with her big green eyes. There was this brightness that laid dormant in them, even though every now and then they held this cynicalness. Her eyes were always extremely captivating. Something about them. I couldn't really say no to them. Really, her. I just don't know what to do with my life. What happened to writing? She was always a little sassy. Well, I like it, but how am I going to support myself on it? It isn't exactly stable. What are you talking about? People write all the time. You can draw. You could probably even do newspaper comics or something. She leaned towards me on the bed. But it's not like a CEO or an office job. Writing isn't exactly seen as constant revenue. Look, everybody always talks about their stupid $1 million ideas. They never shut up. They're always going to try and tell you what to do with your talent and skills, but if you love something, you work, and you work until you do that thing full time, you make it happen, she said. It's not that simple. No, it's more simple than you make it. If you want to do something, you've got to research it, learn. You can do it. Enter a contest and just send in something, anything. What's going on? Why are you bugging out about this so much? Her hand was on my shoulder. Tristan cracked a worried yet sweet smile. I don't know. I guess I think I just need to grow up. I was watching Eric Stoltz now, who was standing in his dirty mechanic jumpsuit and name tag. And what made you think that? I mean, come on. I don't know. I randomly caught this smell recently. I don't know how to describe it. It's light, it's blue, I think. Every time I smell it, it reminds me of this puffy blue blanket that I used to wrap around myself and sit on this old, dark blue corduroy-like couch when I was in the 4th grade. I miss silence. I miss seclusion. I miss just being able to sit down and write without some annoying sound coming from somewhere to interrupt my thought. And I'm still an early 20-something, so I can still kind of pull off the "get in, loser, we're going to the mall" bit. But I'm in college now. I've got a life. I've got to work. I can't keep putting things off to finish them. I stopped myself. I'm such an ass. I'm so sorry. We should pull back the movie a bit. Look, Cyrus, I know you. You're going to keep saying you're working on something and never write it down or show it to anyone. And once you do write something down, you keep repeating over and over you need to revise it, but you never do. Are you afraid of failure or something? What is it? Her hand was on my arm now. We both sat up on the bed. That's not true. I felt her eyes on me. I was too embarrassed to look at her. It's not true that you're afraid of failure, or what? She said. I don't know. Maybe I'm afraid. Look, I don't know. It's hard to sit down and look at something that you've been working on for months or years or longer and just rewrite it. Start over. What about that isn't terrifying? And maybe I never submit my project, but you do it too. Not true. She pointed at me for a moment. Oh, come on. How many albums or bands or songs do you start without ever finishing them? That's not my fault. Other people just bail on me. All the time. They just quit or something. I don't know why, all right? Maybe they just don't believe in the project or believe in me. Maybe I'm just not cut out for it. She crossed her arms. Well, do you ever try to write something by yourself? My hand found itself on her arm. Yeah. What am I going to write? I know nothing about writing a melody or producing or whatever. Maybe part of the problem is that you don't believe in yourself? Oh, please. You're one to talk. You never commit to anything, she said. That's not true. Is it, Cyrus? You have these wants and dreams, but you never act on any of them. Hey, I act. And besides, you do the same thing. You start projects that you're never going to finish. Are you ever going to act first instead of thinking? She got closer. Oh, you are so on. Come on, Cyrus. You're not an action guy. It'd probably take you years before you do something. You're kidding me, right? I bet you can't fully commit and finish anything. Oh, yeah, right. Go ahead. Prove me. Her lips were warm. Ironically, as a writer, I couldn't find a way to describe them. I hadn't felt something like that before. Honestly, I found it funny. There was only a few things that I couldn't describe, and when I looked back on it, I realized all of them were Tristan. The only way I had really found a way to describe those emotions or feelings, or whatever, was through some song she'd listened to. It felt like that last chorus on Heroes, or the chorus on Just What I Needed, or like in Can't Take My Eyes Off You when Frankie Valli sings, I Love You, Baby, and the horns come in. It felt like that. Explosive. And yet I didn't focus on anything besides her. What was that? She was looking down at the floor. My hand was on hers. I didn't exactly remember how it got there, but I was happy that it was. I acted. Yeah, really smooth. You said, prove you wrong. I know, I just didn't expect that. She carefully slid the strand of hair that caressed the side of her face and covered part of the freckles on her cheek behind her ear. I'm sorry, I didn't. My hand caught strands of my brown, shaggy hair while scratching the back of my head. No, I liked it. It's just... What does it mean? Like, for us, I mean. She was still looking down. Well, I guess it means whatever you want it to mean. We could find out if you wanted. It was kind of a dorky answer. I knew it. I knew what she wanted, though. I knew what she meant. She wanted to make sure that it was real. And she was right, too. An escape from reality should be an escape. You shouldn't just exist in that escape. So I wondered if this was real, too. We've been friends for 5 years. She didn't want to mess that up, and I didn't, too. After all, with all these weird dreams lately, everything was pointing at me having this full-on identity crisis. But that wasn't true. I realized those dreams weren't my present. They were just nightmares of what could be. They're what I'm afraid of becoming. Alone. Drowning myself. And I knew that I'd been sitting on these thoughts and emotions for years, and I was so happy to finally act on them. I know you're worried about me committing, but look. I held my phone to her. What is it? She gently took it. It's finished. That's why I'm so tired. I finished last night. For you. I smiled. My face felt warm. It wasn't long before we kissed again, and it wasn't long before I started passing out from the sleep deprivation kicking in. Honestly, my memory was kind of blurry at that point. I didn't exactly remember what all happened. I just remembered waking up for a moment at a time. I was lying on her bed. Tristan was walking towards the right of the room. She was back by me when I opened my eyes again. I didn't remember closing my eyes, but she was holding something in her arms this time. The first thing that I felt when I woke up again was the fluffy, soft, light blue blanket laying over me. Tristan sat with her knees up next to me. She was shivering, so I took her delicate, small hands and gently pulled her towards me. I smelled something sweeter. I guess it was sort of like strawberries, if that makes any sense. I knew I liked it. I knew I wanted more of it, and I knew I smelled it before. It was stronger than the old blue scent. This one made my chest and face warm. Made me smile. The blue blanket hadn't moved. The left side of my body was really warm. My shoulder was heavy, and something was wrapped around my left arm. I looked down and saw Tristan sleeping on my shoulder. Her rebellious strand of hair was caressing the side of her face again. At that point, I didn't think. I just tucked the soft, silky hair behind her ear. I felt this warmness in my chest. You're wearing my future. I looked up and realized the movie was still playing. Eric Stoltz and Mary Stuart Matterson were walking down the street with their backs to the camera. The cheesy cover of I Can't Help Falling in Love with You started playing as the credits came on screen, and the movie started to fade to black. I looked back down at Tristan. I would have checked the time on my phone, but I didn't want to wake her. I just let her sleep on my shoulder and thought to myself, we're going to have to watch this again. It wasn't long before I fell asleep under the blue blanket, with the warm, soft Tristan passed out on my arm. Thank you for listening to this audio presentation of Blue Blankets, written by Jaxon Hess, narrated by Isao Kashiwa. Owari.